Okay, so it's almost 3 o'clock. It's a little bit snoozy, so we're gonna have you guys get up. So stand up. We're gonna do a little bit of stretching.
Yeah, woo woo.
Have a little stretch, little power pose.
Do your power poses.
Power poses.
Take up space.
Is my mic?
Dance to the music in your head.
Love it.
Great.
I'm ready. No, is it on?
Thank you.
Are you ready? It sounds so loud. I don't know why it sounds loud.
So hi. This has been a great afternoon, and I want to thank all the speakers who have come before us, and I think they've all touched upon issues that we are going to be talking about today here. So thank you very much. That was all amazing. My name is Jenny Bergman. I'm the design director for 3% Conference. And the inspiration for this session came about on our team retreat over the summer, where, you know, I freelance. I left sort of traditional job hierarchy when I just couldn't find a place for myself within a traditional structure. So I went and created my own. But every once in a while I think, I should go back into full-time. And I start reading job ads, and then all of a sudden I realize I don't see myself in them. And I said to Lisa, they don't write job descriptions for me. And I think that's a common experience. And so we kind of layered the millennial experience over it. And so that's why we're here today. So I'm gonna ask you guys, when you think about millennials, one word, just shout it out, positive or negative, what comes up for you? What was that? Expensive? Sensitive? Young? Game-changing? Brave?
Brave, I love that.
Entitled? Awesome?
We got it entitled.
Any more words out there? Innovative? Inclusion? These are all things we're going to be talking about right now. So, and a lot of things that our very passionate and powerful panelists are going to talk about today. So I'm going to turn it over to them. Brittany, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Adams. I am actually on the market right now into social strategy and experiential. I do a host of dinner parties in Detroit from start to finish, as far as graphics, getting the talent, putting together the logistics for female entrepreneurs who want to get together and network with a different vibe. I think more connections are made over dinner and drinks, and those businesses have actually blossomed from my event. And I actually have another one coming up this winter, and I have a very, very big sponsor. So I'm really looking to get into experiential this year.
Hi, ladies and some gents. My name is Marian Gassus, and I am a creative director / creative entrepreneur as of a couple months ago. And the reason why I left the agency world, I'm still in advertising very much, here I am. But the reason why I left the agency world was very simple. I simply could not do it anymore. It felt like entering the alternate universe at some point. You know, you're entering the upside down or the sunken place. So I just decided that maybe this isn't for me. You know, there's nothing wrong with the agency life, but I wasn't really fitting in. So I left. Like any abusive relationship, it had to end. So I ended it, and then I went to start my own businesses. It's only been a couple of months, and it's going pretty well. But my relationship with this subject, why millennials don't want to work for you, really started since the day I started working in advertising 8 years ago. And just the whole experiencing everything from 8 years ago up to now, there's a lot of issues in the workplace that haven't been addressed, and hoping that we can give you guys some ideas on how to make it more welcoming for the younger generation in the workplace.
Great, thank you. So thinking about that job description and that job ad as a millennial or Gen Y entering the workplace, what do you think our millennials are looking for in the creative job market? And more specifically, what do they want to see in that job listing, do you think?
So when you think about job listings, recent job listings, what I see is usually a laundry list of things that the agency wants the candidate to have. You have to have this, you have to do this, you must know this, you must do this. It's almost like they're asking for a magician to join their agency. And what I don't see is what is the agency offering to the candidate so they can lure them in. And by offerings, I don't mean basic things like insurance or vacation days, but as a candidate, why should I work for you? There's a lot of companies and competition out there. So what is it that you believe in? What is it that you can provide me? How are you going to help me in my career? And as you know, millennials are usually driven by impact and they're mission driven. And that's something that's missing in a lot of job listings. Like, what is the agency stands for? What do they believe in? How are they gonna change the world or whatever? Millennials are mission driven. They're usually just looking for, they have their own values, they have their own mission, and they're just looking for a team to get together and make that happen together. And if that workplace is not providing them with that, they will leave.
For me, I think it's very interesting to look at job descriptions now and notice they're going to box you in. And if the millennial gets a sense that there won't be an opportunity for me to maybe explore other areas in the agency, they'll instantly just kind of move on to another posting, another listing. So it's very important for agencies to have in the job description, you'll have the opportunity to grow and learn. You don't have to be stuck in this particular job title, and you have an opportunity to be mentored by someone who's actually probably not even in your field, someone who you're going in for strategy, but you have an opportunity to be mentored by someone who's in the creative department. Just having that openness so that we as millennials can still grow while we're working for you.
Well, I think millennials certainly value fluidity and collaboration, and they want permeability among roles and teams. And so, and the freedom of thought and creativity, definitely. Do you have any thoughts or stories that relate to that?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about fluidity and collaboration, you think about a model that allows for fluidity and collaboration. And when I think about the current model in advertising right now, it really hasn't changed that much since the 50s. We still have art and copy, we still have creative and media, and there's a lot of silos. And millennials coming to the workplace with a diverse set of talent, and they want to be able to contribute their whole selves to work, bring their whole selves to work, contribute all their talents. And what usually happens is that the model doesn't allow for it because it's very top-down. It's very much everybody at the top make all the decisions. And millennials, it's not that they don't want to learn or be guided or be mentored. It's just that they want to be part of the process. And as long as that model is top-down, you're not going to allow for the flow of idea, which can be very discouraging and very. They see it as a waste of time. It's like, why am I here if you don't care about my ideas? I'm just going to go out and do them on my own, and that's what usually tends to happen.
Yeah, so I think that's a really important point. Like, if we're not valuing their contributions, then guess what's going to happen?
Right.
They're going to leave, and they're going to go create their own thing, for good or bad. So it's, yeah. So I'd really love to touch upon the diversity and inclusion issue and how millennials really value that in their workplace. And I would love to hear from you guys about, what has been your experiences in a traditional agency structure as it relates to diversity and inclusion. Because I think, you want to come into the workplace and see yourself represented and heard.
For me, representation is extremely important, and I think just across the board, for millennials, it's extremely important. So to be at an agency where you see someone that's a person of color in a higher up role, they're a VP, they're could possibly even be the CEO, that just encourages you to keep fighting the good fight. And honestly, that's what it feels like for us in the ad world right now. We're going into work fighting to be heard, fighting for our ideas to be accepted, fighting for the opportunities to even grow and be mentored sometimes, because you get placed in positions where it may only be 1 or 2 people that look like you, and there's no one to really relate to. And so you have to kind of mold yourself to fit in instead of showing up as your authentic self. So having someone there that looks like you is extremely important.
I mean, this has been a constant thread throughout the afternoon about bringing your whole self. This is critically important to this cohort. So, Miriam, you had something to say.
Well, when I think about millennials, in general, millennials tend to have a diverse set of friends compared to older generations, where now we have many generations in the workplace. So when they get to work and they see the lack of diversity, at the very least, it's shocking. But at the very worst, it's disorienting because it doesn't reflect the real world. Again, you're entering the alternate universe where you're like, why isn't this reflective of the world that we live in, right? And the conversations that we always have. So for people of color, though, it's way worse. And if you want to know my personal experience as a person of color, woman of color in the industry, I wrote about it. I wrote an article about it. It's on Medium, and it's also in your program, page 84. And it's really not safe to be a person of color in an ad agency. It really isn't. That's a fact. But one thing to keep in mind also is that people of color, a lot of them feel the burden of representing their cultures and representing their communities in the workplace. In fact, many creatives of color chose this career so they can bring more representation. So you add that mission-driven, and you know, it's triple mission-driven. So when you get to the workplace and there's no one that looks like you, and then you have to kind of go into this battlefield and have to defend yourself and do all these things, it's kind of and excuse my words, but it's a mindfuck.
And just looking at what we saw earlier today, you know, it said African Americans make up 5% of the ad industry. You know, that number has gone down. It used to be 7.8%. Now, that says a lot right there. So the representation that matters to me and matters to millennials who are people of color, you know, that number is decreasing. So we're going to continue to go into these workplaces and not have a VP, an executive, or even someone who's on our same maybe entry level that looks like us.
It's funny because when I started in advertising, I mean, I didn't know any of these things. I was just a creative trying to do good work, really. And I got there and I see the lack of diversity and lack of women and all that, and I started doing a lot of work with other organizations like the 3% and many other ones to bring more diversity to the industry and to spark movements, and we did. We sparked a lot of talk, but I didn't see the numbers. When I quit, there are less people of color in the industry than when I started, and that was basically my, you know, like, I'm done. Like, this is crazy. All the work that we've done is not really showing, and you have to wonder, what is the issue? Why are we talking about it and there's nothing being done? There's got to be something else going on that maybe we haven't pinpointed yet. Yeah.
I'd be interested in knowing what that is. Brittany, when we were talking before this, you had an interesting comment about feeling like you work 10 times as hard to get half the recognition. So I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about that.
So in the Black community, we are actually taught to work 10 times as hard so that we can just be seen, just to get the recommendation for the promotion. There are a lot of times where we could be working 10 times as hard and not even be considered, but actually, First Lady Michelle Obama did a speech, and she quoted the same thing. You know, in the African American community, you have to work 10 times as hard just to be seen, and that's tiring. If every single day, and I mean Monday through Sunday, I'm working my behind off 10 times as hard just to get an acknowledgement of, oh, good job. And I have counterparts who are white males who are barely working, and they're getting all the praise. Mentally, that does something to you over time. You want to stop fighting. You want to just say, forget it, I'm done with this industry. But I mean, for me and how I was raised in my background and in my family history, there's a fight in me. There's a persistence in me to continue to work 10 times as hard, because eventually I know there's going to be somebody that's going to be entry level one day that's going to need to see me in a higher up VP position. They're going to need me to guide them through this really crazy sunken place maze of advertising, and I want to be there for them. So it's tiring. It's mentally draining. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with mentors and colleagues of people who are people of color, where we're just like, when is enough enough? But we always think eventually there's going to be somebody who needs to see me and needs me as a mentor, so I can't give up yet. But it's ask any person of color in here, and they're going to nod their head and say exactly, like, yeah, we work 10 times as hard.
Which kind of brings me, I was talking to Lovey after the privilege exercise in the green room, and we were talking about privilege, and I said, okay, so what if HR, they've checked off their boxes, they've done their diversity hires, but what happens when those young people of color, that trans person, like what happens when they get into the workplace and they find that the structure doesn't really support them? There's nothing in place to support them. So again, like taking it from the perspective of like, in that job description, what are some of those things that we want to see? Like, how do we address that?
I think again, like I said, millennials are looking for safe places to bring their whole self to work. So they can't. It's very hard for us to hide a certain part of ourselves, as the previous generations they were forced to do. I don't think that was their choice, and they managed to do it well. God bless them. But the millennials are like, no, I want to bring my entire self to work. So one of the clues in the job listings is what's the process like? You know, is it collaborative? You know, how big is the team? Usually smaller teams tend to work better than bigger teams. Is it flexible? You know, that's a huge one, flexibility. You know, working 9 to 5, I don't know, or 10 to 8 for creatives. Why is that still a thing? You know, in the digital age, why can't we just work from anywhere and just establish this trust that work is going to get done? Because people have different work. They work differently. Some people prefer to work. Some people prefer the 9 to 5, and that's great for them. But some creatives, specifically, some people work better at night. And what happens? They spend all day at home, and they go home and keep working, and that can become very draining and affect your mental health greatly. And I can speak to that. So I think in the job descriptions, the agency should talk as much about themselves as about what they want from the candidate. It's a 50-50 thing. It's a giving and receiving. It's not just, we want you to do all of this, come work for us. That's a perfect way to turn off the best talent, and especially diverse talent. They see that and they're like, nope, you want a workhorse. And we want to create, and we want to collaborate, and we want to grow. And those things are not being reflected, and they need to be. Agencies should really focus on their mission, what they're offering to the candidate, and what they bring to the table, more than just the basic benefits.
So we keep going back to the word safe. And I'm hoping everybody kind of gets that. Like, that's really huge for us as millennials, to be in an environment where we feel safe enough to speak up, safe enough to ask questions and not be labeled as just making noise. Or if you're an African-American woman, it's ruckus. It's not even noise anymore. Just asking a simple question. So it's very important, to answer your question, Jenny. if you have that representation in HR, then it's like kind of like a sigh of relief. Like, you know, they'll be able to understand culturally where you're coming from. And if you have someone that's LGBTQ in the HR department, again, a sigh of relief, because they understand culturally where you're coming from, and they can guide you in a way that someone that doesn't have that same experience won't be able to guide you. So it's very important to have across the board that representation so that people can come and have that safe place to kind of release so that it doesn't start affecting their work or their mental health.
What I find fascinating is that, 20 years ago when I was young and into the job market, I looked really young. Anyway, I'm millennial adjacent, that's what I like to say. So 20 years ago when I was fresh on the market looking for jobs, it was a lot like what you described. It's like, here's a list of everything we want you to do, and there was no connection to purpose or anything like that. And then I find it interesting now how that's really shifting to, we're doing this kind of work, and you know what I see less of now is we're a Fortune 500 company, because I don't really give, that's not why I want to work for you. It is. I think it is for a millennial, for that cohort, and it is for me. So I love it when I can see that companies are really making a commitment to defining their mission and putting a stake in the ground, and I think that a lot of people respond to that. So, I just think it's fascinating that that model is really flipping a lot. So it's more like they're trying to prove, hey, we're worth working for. You know what I mean? So come and work for us. So it's like to attract that talent. So moving on, now we have 4 generations in the workplace. We have boomers and Xers, and they're typically in leadership. And we have millennials and Gen Y. What are some of the challenges that millennials face in that environment?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the model, for me, the model doesn't work for millennials, or actually I don't think it works for anybody, because you have the boomers and the Gen Xers usually at the top, and they're making all the decisions. I mean, it's not even fair for them, while millennials, they want to collaborate. So and they want to collaborate, they want to learn, but they're also not afraid to teach. And that could be a problem between generations. There needs to be a mentality of reverse mentorship, that's what I would call it, where ideas can flow up and down in any direction. I think it's actually really, really cool that we have 4 generations in the workplace. That just means so many years of experience put together, and as a creative industry, that should be we should be living our golden age right now. But unfortunately, the model does not allow for that. It's very much, we tell you what to do, you execute, and then we decide everything. And that is what I think is creating a lot of issues. It should be infused in the culture that everybody should be able to contribute, share their ideas, without being treated like a child or without being treated like they don't know. Because the fact is, we live in the digital age, and chances are millennials know a lot more or how to navigate that space than the boomers or Gen Xers. And it's not good versus bad, it's that everybody has their expertise, and we should all come together and work and make sure that the ideas flow. Right now, they don't flow, they only flow down, or maybe there's a lot of hurdles. So I would encourage agencies to rethink their structure and to rethink the way ideas flow within their creative departments, because what happens is that millennials get tired of just always saying, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to hear my idea, please see me, please look at me, and then they're like, you know what, I could probably do what you do in 6 months in a weekend, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway.
Well, you just touched upon that sort of the adaptability, more willingness to take on technology and to ideate in real time. That is something that this cohort is very well known for. So I see that as a friction point as well. So, I mean, you've done social, you understand that Yeah.
And another thing to add to that is being authentic with it as well. So when you're creating this environment for millennials to be able to contribute something, we can sense when you're not being authentic. And that will be a huge turnoff for us. If you want to hear us, sincerely listen, sincerely, add to it or say, maybe we can try it a different way. We're very open. We're very open to critiques. We're very open to new ways of doing things. We're very open to collaborating. That's huge for us. So just go into the room with the open mindset that, yeah, this young lady may be the same age as my daughter, but she probably has a lot to offer in the meeting today.
So this brings me around to, my feeling is that large agencies especially, are very averse to risk. Do you think that millennials find it easier to embrace creative risk?
I think so. I think it's just the way they do things, right? Millennials, they express their ideas by going out and making it happen and then editing it in real time and just go with the flow, right? Now, I understand you can't always do that at agencies, but I think you can create an environment or a culture that does that. So yes, I think millennials are more risk averse. And when you put that with big giant companies who are so afraid of every little thing, then it's just not a good match.
Well, they want to make sure they're delivering value to who's writing the checks. So.
Sometimes taking risks can take you a completely different direction that you may not have even thought of, right? It can pay off really immensely. Yeah.
And just to add, without innovation, what type of impact are you really making with your creative anyway? So being risky, being innovative should be really top of the list.
Definitely.
I think the hardest thing about the risk and the way millennials work, again, they're like out there executing their work and putting it out there every single day. And when they get to agencies and something takes months to execute, it's really, really difficult to keep them engaged if things take so long, and then you have all these meetings and meetings and meetings about meetings. And millennials, it's not that they don't want to work for you, it's just they just don't want to sit there and just talk. They want to produce work. So if they're not producing work, they're out.
Yeah, the talking versus doing aspect is really, really important. So bringing it back to the central question a little bit. So we have an audience full of people who are looking to get answers to this big question and try to solve this problem. So I know we've kind of touched on a lot of things, but really, what's the bottom line? And we can get a little uncomfortable here, but why don't millennials want to work for them?
Too rigid, the structure is too rigid. The model may work for banks, it doesn't work for creative industries.
Too political and not enough diversity.
Yes, diversity is huge. Diversity, I personally believe that if agencies or any companies really don't get the act together and really hire a lot of diverse people, I think, like we saw in one of the presentations, they will go extinct, honestly.
Yeah, if you look at the Nivea ad that was up earlier, the first thought that crosses my mind, well, either A, there was no person of color in the room to say, you have got to be kidding me, or B, there was a person of color in the room, but they didn't feel empowered enough to speak up and say anything. Because at the end of the day, as a person of color, you're one comment or question away from losing your job. So why risk that if you know they're not going to listen anyway? That's what has to change in agencies. Create an environment where your voice can actually be heard, and the millennials will want to work for you.
I also think open-mindedness and the ability to have conversations and debate and disagree and maybe agree and just kind of go at it. I feel like a lot of agencies, they're too afraid to tell each other, no, that work is bad or that work is good, and there's just a lot of secrecy that happens. And I think that, or sometimes it's usually like the CD or the creative director, senior leadership is always right. When it comes to creativity, that's not right? When that's actually not accurate, it's very subjective. And millennials, being that they are very, very much collaborators, they just want to do the best work possible. They don't care where ideas are coming from, but when you have senior leadership saying, this is how we're going to do it, then it becomes an industry about ego, not creativity. And that's a huge issue because millennials just want to make impact. They just want to create work, see it out there, see it affect people, and move on to the next project. So it's more about like continuously creating impact.
Is there, like, okay, so if we've done our job and we're recruiting and we're supporting millennials and Gen Yers and we've got them in the workplace and they're doing incredible work and they feel supported and validated and listened to and there's a free flow of ideas, is there a dark side to any of this? The answer can be no, I don't know. But is there a dark side to any of that?
Yeah. Well, the dark side of hiring many millennials sometimes at the same time is that this could manifest in like, okay, you have your summer interns, right? And they're so excited, they have so much energy, or maybe you hire a bunch of juniors at once, and millennials they're coming ready to work. They're ready to put their head down and produce stuff. So with putting them together as a group, there's just so much passion and energy, and it has to manifest somehow. And usually people are afraid of that. There's too much, right? They need to take it easy. Again, things take months. So what they usually do, and I've seen this in my career, I've done this exercise at least 50 times in 8 years, is they get these groups together and then they give them a brief. And that brief could be a pro bono project or a fake project or an internal project, or sometimes it could even be a client project, right? And they're like, okay, go do whatever you want, you're empowered. So they go and take 2 weeks, they work their ass off, they make great work, they come and show it to the creative director or whoever is in charge. And then creative director is like, this is amazing, I love it, I'm gonna go present it. And then a week goes, 2 weeks goes, and then it just disappears and dissipates, and you never hear about that project again. And then a month later, they come with another project. And I think that's a technique that they do to keep people busy and keep them thinking, which is fine, but maybe position it that way as opposed to say, yeah, we want you to break this brief, and then you don't make the work happen. I think that's a huge, huge issue because they do have a lot of energy. They can empower each other, and they do have a lot of creativity to put out. But if you keep giving them work that is not being produced over and over and over again, they will burn out and they will feel like it's a waste of time, and then they will leave.
And I think that's important to understand too, that, you know, as an older generation, you have that responsibility of, you know, really making sure that you're not burning that light that's inside of them. Like, you had that light once when you first started in this industry, and you want to make sure that it keeps going. So you don't want to continue to give mundane projects and not at least follow up. You know, have the courtesy to say, this didn't go through, but we're gonna push for the next one. We respect stuff like that, but just to kind of push it off to the side and have this elephant in the room like it's not there, like we just spent 2 months on a project and you're not gonna mention anything, you know, we remember those little small things, and slowly but surely, that light that we started with on the first day, it can get completely turned off. And I've seen it in people, and it's not a pretty sight. Like, so much talent is just walking out of the door because that passion is being dimmed.
So maybe the solution is to, I don't know, maybe have them do some internal work. It just has to get produced. I think that's key. They have to put it out there. I've done so many projects. Imagine 50 times. That's 50 campaigns that never saw the light of day that I could have done with the same group outside of the agency and probably find a client and produced it, right? So again, it's really not, it's not that they're lazy. Millennials are labeled as lazy or entitled. They just bring the best of themselves and they expect the best. They bring stuff to the table and they expect it to go all the way. They don't want it to die, or if it dies, they want a valid reason, not just, oh, you're just a cute intern.
I'm curious, because someone just said entitled earlier today when we were asking what they thought of. could that person maybe, if they don't mind, I don't mean to call you out, could you maybe explain why you think, or if anyone feels that way, why do you think millennials are entitled?
No, I would say I'm a millennial. It was something where, it wasn't a negative thing. I know it comes across as a negative term, and I apologize for that. It's something where a lot of times someone will start and, I want to start running, and it's going to be half of the basics first. It's something where I want to start speaking with Nina. I don't even be Nina out there, and I don't want to be something cute, but you guys are going to call, where you can walk, where you can run, you have to do the building, you have to do these basic build. That foundation. So instead of saying, I was talking to my class, why are they doing what she's doing? She's been working well, and that's not too. So that's what I was saying by it. Or I think there's that wonderful market condition, which sometimes doesn't really have that basis or foundation yet.
See, I would turn that around and say that entitlement, what comes across as entitlement is just simply self-awareness and self-awareness of their worth, and I think you're probably more willing to advocate for yourself and say, no, I know my shit, And I remember, this is kind of a funny story, and I only half regret it, but we were doing the mini-con up in Portland, Oregon, and we were doing portfolio reviews, and there was this super talented African-American man he had some partners, and they just went out and did footage of like street festivals, and Adidas happened to be a sponsor, but they just went out and did this work and produced this content, and it was so brilliant. And the guy was still in school, and I looked at his work, and I'm like, why are you here? Quit school. You don't need school. Go out and make the work. So I think that's something that touches upon what you said of like, oh, you got to pay your dues. And I'm like, no, just go out and do it. And I meet a lot of young people who are creating content, and I think that's a really important voice to listen to in your head. If you don't see what you want to see out there, just go make it. And you don't have to follow the rules, make your fucking rules.
And the issue with paying your dues, I do understand your point. When you're a junior, you need to train a little bit to understand how the agency environment works and all that. I totally get that. But millennials are not only juniors. I'm not a junior, I'm a millennial, right? They're always looked at as the juniors because they're the younger generation in the workplace, but they're not necessarily juniors. They could be, but they could also be mid-level or seniors even. And I think that the idea of paying your dues to millennials, it sounds like we want to reprogram you so you can fit within our box. That's like, for me, that's a huge turnoff. It's like, I want to learn, I want mentorship, I want sponsorship, I want to be part of the process so that I can learn, because I don't need it to be fed to me or pushed towards me. You just have me in the room in the client meeting and I will learn a ton. You don't have to do a thing. Just let me have a seat at the table and I will learn all that I need to learn. So when it comes to paying your dues, it's like, is it paying your dues, or is it like do it exactly the way we're used to do it? And that is just not going to work for millennials.
And I think that's the important part to look into with mentorship. And I think someone had mentioned earlier, I think she left, having that sponsorship, someone who can advocate for you and they know you. So they know your working style, your learning style is completely different from the person that you work with that sits right next to you, and they treat you accordingly. They don't treat you as if, you know, they were reteaching themselves or reteaching the same person. Everyone is an individual. So how I pick up and gain things, it may only take me a month to get acclimated with, you know, how things are done. And then after that, I can say, you know what, I'm ready to be a manager. I'm ready for the next level. I have the confidence and I have the mentor that's helping me along the way. Like, everyone is different. Yeah. And yeah.
So there's so much more I want to say to that, but time is running out. So as millennials and Gen Yers move up into leadership roles now and through the next 10 years, how do you see them, how do you plan to transform the workplace so that you're doing the work that you're passionate about and has impact?
I'm probably going to kick the politics to the curb at this point. it can be an intern coming in that has this brilliant idea, and I don't want to silence that individual just because they're an intern. So to me, kicking the politics out the door and really having an open, authentically open environment where we can all collaborate.
The first thing I would do is break the model. So it's more of a collaborative, it's more of a decentralized model as opposed to a monarchy, right? That's the first thing. Second thing is flexibility. Allow people to work from anywhere and on their own terms. As long
Say that
as
again.
the deadlines.
Say that again.
Less meetings, more doing, less talking. More purpose-driven versus money-driven. Now that doesn't mean that we don't care about the money. We will make money, but instead of billing per hours and making everything so long, maybe bill with efficiency. So the more efficient, the more I make money. I think that will be a very interesting model. And 100% diversity. That's the number one. I should have started with that. The workplace has to reflect. It has to reflect where we live in now, but it has to reflect the future that's about to come, right? We can't just always live in the now, like, oh, this is okay for now. No, but in 2020, the majority of children are going to be non-white children. So how are you creating for them? What are you doing for them? That is your future consumer. So we have to be able to be smart about who we're talking to and have to predict the future a little bit and shape it. And definitely agency model change. And maybe smaller teams, more nimble teams as opposed to these big, systems. There can be a big agency, but smaller groups would be better. And I don't know what else.
Diversity.
Diversity, diversity, diversity. Diversity. And diversity. So kind of wrapping this up a little, and then we'll do some questions. I know there's someone back there who really wants to answer a question. So taking all of this into consideration, what is the ideal workplace for millennials? And we rattled up a very long list. But starting with diversity.
Where you can bring your whole self to work.
Yep.
And a relatively safe space where you can work from anywhere. And you have support, and you can collaborate with the intern to the CEO and not feel like you're just there waiting for somebody to make decisions for you at all times. Freedom.
Freedom is important, and freedom means in the environment your voice can be heard, and it doesn't matter what your job title is, and people still listen. An environment where we keep pushing it, but diversity is so important. We as millennials, we want to learn about other cultures as well. We want to learn, what's offensive, what's not offensive, how do you celebrate Christmas? What does your family do for birthdays? And all this stuff, once you learn it, it can definitely be reflected in the creative that you make. And that's really what we should be doing anyway, so that when you have, a biracial family, they can have that representation in commercials, in print, and it's not just maybe once in a blue moon where they see themselves. It's something that's in the future, hopefully, is repetitive. We see it all the time, and it's normal. At this point, it's still normal to just see an ad where it's all white people, or a commercial, it's all white people, and then they sprinkle in, there's one black person, there's one Latino person, and then that's it. Or if it's, you're trying to market to a specific demographic, then sometimes you kind of enter into that little cliche cultural references in the ad. And again, had that person of color been represented when this was being made, the whole ad can be completely different. So just a workplace where culturally we can start seeing ourselves more in the creative.
I do think that, I'm going back to diversity again, because I think that is the solution. If agencies would just do an experiment and hire a diverse team, it doesn't have to be the whole agency, it could just be a team, and give them a week and tell them, okay, how would you do it? And just see what they come up with. You know, get that group of millennials to do that, and maybe implement some of those things so they're not mad at you later. But, I think that when you put a diverse group of people together, it's impossible not to have some kind of like traction, you know, and conversation, and things will naturally bubble up. The reason why we're here now is because a lot of people are very comfortable to where they are. So bringing diversity and letting them be themselves, because what happens now is that they are being brought and they're not being empowered to be themselves, so they leave. There is a leak in the pipeline. So letting them be themselves and take charge and be leaders and change things. Let them change things. See if it works. And you can just evaluate it by your bottom line. But I think that would be a very interesting exercise to do, and just get your millennials together and tell them what's your agency of the future, and maybe draw from that.
Yeah. And I just want to make the case for a healthy environment. An environment that really values mental health and physical health and self-care. Because that's an issue that impacts me personally. So thank you, Brittany and Mariam, for speaking about your experiences. I'd really love to open it up to questions. So is there a mic floating around? Or just, you know, shout them out. You had a question earlier.
I didn't have a question. It was more, but more as usual, said it better than I can. So I think, you know, the idea is, and I'm sure everyone has heard it floated around, oh my God, a great idea can come from anyone. I totally believe in that. And then when somebody comes up with a great idea, in a new thought, in a new way, and they want to be able to roll it out quickly, they're, oh my God, they're so entitled. Why would they want to do it that way? So it's really, you know, I had to explain to somebody, it's not so much about entitlement, it's, you know, this generation, and I'm not 900, but this generation was born with a gadget. I mean, let's be honest. They're born with a gadget. You're going to do things quicker and faster and more creative than those who are born before you. So you have to be able to embrace it. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth and say, I want you to be as creative as you possibly can, but you have to do it exactly the way that we have done it in the past. So with that, when you bring the diversity in, and when you understand that it's not, oh my God, a sense of entitlement, it's if you work with your younger, I hate the word, millennial, that are in your agency, you are going to get your best work possible. It's just a completely different mindset. But it starts with diversity, and it starts with people learning that they have to let go and think broad.
Thank you. You know, Leeson and I, or not Leeson, sorry, Laurel, who's doing the next Creative Leaders panel right now over in Emerging Creatives, we were hanging out trying to do our last minute prep for our sessions, you know, like last night, very late. And she was showing me a lot of the work from the next Creative Leaders, and one of the pieces that Laurel shared with me was, it was an anti-bullying campaign, and it was really simple. It was deceptively simple. It just had to do with this witness emoji on your phone. And in the questionnaire, the most satisfying part of the project for that creator, and I'm blanking on her name right now, was that that campaign launched, and it is on every iPhone in the world. You cannot get that kind of reach in traditional media. And so that's the kind of thinking that millennials can bring. So, and to turn it around quickly and simply. So.
Another thing I just remembered and wanted to add was that when that person was thinking of that campaign, she was thinking, or she or he, she was thinking that she wanted to make as much impact as possible, therefore it ended in every iPhone. A lot of times what I'm seeing in agencies is that we don't think about impact in our briefs, we think about awards. I call that the Bronze Age, because why are we still thinking about awards when we're creating our work? Why aren't we thinking about impact? There's so many issues in the world that we have the power to solve, yet there's still that mentality of, we just want to win awards. Come up with some award-winning thing, and that's so annoying at the very least, and just tiring, you know, to be able to, millennials don't respond as well to awards as their older generations. So I think thinking impact first when writing briefs, this is for strategists, is really going to change, you know, the way we see creative, the type of creative that we come up with in the industry.
Did you want to answer that? Okay. So any more questions or comments out there? Yeah?
I have a question. So I'm a millennial, and I can attest that not every idea that comes out of millennials now is pure gold. So I guess my question is, I think, you know, as far as the earning your way, I know that's very subjective to old-fashioned feeling, but the thing that you do learn in that type of construct is filter. So as far as managing millennials and knowing that they have these creative, amazing ideas, but also knowing that, you know, they need to learn to filter their ideas and not always everything that they have to bring to this really excellent. Like, what are your ideas about that? How do you sort of walk both sides of that line?
Oh, I'll just want to step in and say, as a creative director, I've gotten decks that are like, there's 12 ideas in here. I just want 3. Yeah. And you're right, they were not all golden, dripping from their mouths, but anyway. I don't think I handled it well either, but anyway.
I instantly just thought of my old boss. Her name's Tier. She's actually at Campbell Ewald now. She was like excellent. Let me tell you, if I came to the table with a bad idea, she let me know. And she let me know why. And it's how she did it. She never did it in front of people. She never did it to embarrass me. She did it to teach me. And so that I could be eventually a better social strategist. And I am a better social strategist because of her. For all the times that she told me, no. And she would explain why it was a no or why things needed to be done differently. So it's how millennials are taught, and it's how we're corrected. Don't do it in a way to embarrass us. Do it in a way to teach us.
So that's interesting, because the feedback you got was very direct.
Oh, she's the tough love queen. Yeah, absolutely.
I think millennials
Maybe
love that.
Yeah.
Just be real and be direct and say, hey, I don't want 12 ideas next time. Can you narrow it down to 3? These are not good because they're not on brief. And the brief is this, and it doesn't match with the brief. So please, to save time, just do your 12 ideas, but for the purpose of saving time, just bring your best favorite 3 to the table, and then you leave it up to them to decide what those 3 are. But it really is a mentorship thing, you know, just the guidance.
Oh, I say bring me 2 solid ideas and bring me 1 crazy idea. Like, bring me the wild card.
Yeah.
So
my rule is, here is the answer to your brief. Here is what I think you should play, and here is something completely crazy, just so I can make sure you know that I am very creative.
And I would say, too, watch them over time. So it's not going to always start off great. It's not always going to be, oh my gosh, they're like the golden child. They're amazing at this. But eventually, over time, they'll get there. So you have to have a level of patience as well.
Anybody else? Oh, well, looks like we have to wrap. Oh, wait. Oh, can we do one more? Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So, I live in LA now, half worked years, and I love the way some people that I had followed and was crazy about and couldn't get seen found their own distribution models. I'm thinking of Lena Waithe and Issa Rae and even Ava DuVernay and Shonda Rhimes, who are more establishment, but even they kind of came up in alternate ways. So assuming, and I completely respect, I've drunk the Kool-Aid with millennials. I've worked with them. I've done focus groups with older people and with millennials where I walked out and I thought, if I ever become like this older group, just shoot me. Like, take me outside and shoot me. Because I love everything about the way you all see the world. But people, and I get that you don't want to replicate just to replicate. If industries don't want to be disrupted because people do not like change, and you have to go off track for a while and disrupt, what would that look like?
I guess I'm on that track right now. Yeah, I'm on that track right now, and really having these uncomfortable conversations and being open to more opportunities where I can speak to my experience as a person of color, being a millennial and being a woman in the advertising industry, and not being afraid to say what's not popular and evoke not just a conversation, because with millennials too, we are at this point are kind of tired of lip service, but to figure out some actionable steps so that the industry can change. Like, it's not a matter of you may not want to change, you're gonna have to. Or your company is probably no longer gonna exist, because like you said, in 2020, we're gonna be making up, I think, 60% of the workforce anyway. So you're gonna have to change. It's just gonna be a matter of, are you gonna do it in the beginning of the conversation or towards the end where now millennials have labeled you a place where I don't wanna work for you? So it's best to catch on now.
I mean, I think it's a very, very good question and a long one to answer, but I would think the thing that popped in my mind was it's a complete shift, is that now advertisers with traditional advertising, they've always been in control of the brand. In social media, people are in control. So the first thing I would do is give people back the control and let go of me having to control my brand and every single thing. Really empower people to take my brand and take it to where they need to take it. So that would be one of the biggest disruption I would hope would happen in advertising, where people are more in control. It sounds counterproductive, but I think it'll work, because it'll hold us as advertisers accountable.
Well, thank you again for being here, and thank you to our panelists, Miriam and Brittany.
Thank you.
And thank you, Leeson.
Don't you just want to bottle all that genius and take it back to your offices? Incredible, you guys rocked it. I wanted to answer your quick question because I think we already have a market test going on right now. My research showed that women, mothers of my generation, value time over money. Not that they don't want to be paid well, and they value meaning over marching up the ladder. You do research on millennials, it's the exact same thing. We have a data set, and the data set says they're going to leave, and they already are. The women have left, millennials are going to leave too, and we got a problem if we don't solve it. On that negative note, let's go next door, because we've got some amazing things happening, and I want you guys all to get there fast. At 4:15, we got to get in there, because the daughters of the evolution, the next generation, are going to be talking. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Make America, for sponsoring this. Hope you guys had a great day.